extension, there was no architecture without violence. Of course, Bratton architecture and disjunction. Our situation is one characterized by nothing so much as risk. Mapped well, I think, by a school of European social theory, which Beck builds a whole theory around risk, Bourdieu around precarity, Sigmund Bauman around liquidity, Aurelio around the accident. And I think it's in this mode of theory, and not the literary theory of the decon moment, that architecture has now turned. Aurelio told us that every new technology is also the invention of a new accident. The invention of the train is the invention of the train crash. The invention of the airplane is the invention of the airplane crash. And apparently, the invention of the stock market is the invention of the stock market crash. The collapse of the bubble was an accident of accidents, of computation, of virtualization, of telecommunications, of the technology of tastelessness. And the interfacial image is its own accident. You recall the terrorist attacks on Mumbai a few months ago? It was interesting to understand, to find out that the attackers used quite extensive, sophisticated array of at-hand geocomputational media, satellite phones, even Twitter feeds, to keep in contact with each other. And to understand in real time their position in relationship to the city. At the same time, those who were stuck in the midst of Mumbai, in the attack, also employed Twitter as a way to keep in contact with each other. Many of us watch these events unfold by watching in real time the testimony of people experiencing them as such. That is, in every accident, a new technology. It's not just that every technology produces a new accident. Rather, every accident produces a new technology. But really then, what now? What does architecture do now that when every city is Dubai, every company is Enron, every customer is Paris Hilton, and every client is Rick Caruso? For those of you who are squeamish, may wish to avert your eyes for the next video. This as well, in terms of sort of the kind of, well, it sort of speaks for itself. Why architecture used?
Well, architecture is one of the great arts. It's the mother of the arts. It includes life. It's a spiritual discipline as well as a technical discipline. It's about leaving something which is permanent. I was very impressed by Abu Dhabi, its history, its dynamic development, the fact that it's a place with incredible aspiration. It's a place creating the future. And I was inspired by the open hand, the hand of generosity open to the world. And at the same time, the wave of the future. Well, first of all, it's uniquely related to that spectacular master plan on the canal, across from the Corniche, visible and situated in such a way that it will become sculptural form, visible from 360 degrees. To be an icon, the building has to be rooted in Abu Dhabi. It has to tell the story of the place. It has to link the visible and the invisible. It has to show what is on the ground and what is in the sky. And it has to become a building that connects itself with the hearts and souls of people.
Sorry, I had to see that.
Well, architecture is one of the great...
I'm not saying that Libeskind needs to commit suicide. Nor am I not saying that. I'm saying that this mode, this unfortunate mode of architecture, the useless, money-grubbing, royalty-sucking, self-serving, self-congratulatory, pandering, cheeseball, bullshit mode of architecture needs to commit suicide, or it will take the whole planet down with it. The phase of civilization in which the Libeskinds were allowed to operate without supervision is over. So what now? Well, let's consider three scenarios, both of which, some of which assume that, to some extent, the the emergency that we're designing for may be the wrong one. So place your bets accordingly. Scenario 1, this too shall pass. This phase in the uncomfortable shift towards a more intensely integrated disintegration in network geopolitics will all eventually plateau. The misery will come to an end. It will be temporary. It will end not like Nazism ended, but more like how disco ended. And when it does, we'll be glad that we did not redress our cities in embarrassing fashion of an emergency. Scenario 2. Asymmetrical warfare becomes the very basis of global network society. Finance terrorism is integral, if also indecent. As decentralized challenges to decentralized systems, it is war and counter-warfare meaning that will not end because it cannot end. The stakes are just too high. The fight over the ontology of money cannot be deferred, but rather refought. Scenario 3, a positive scenario. The soft and hard interfaces blend, that the ability of software is to somehow, and our more intelligent design imaginaries for it, somehow miraculously result in a triumph of reason and passion, and a final marginalization of conservative retrograde fantasies of libertarian neurosis. Good luck with that. 4 then tacks for architecture within this. I think one many will go down, is in pursuit of the interfacial image, pursuit of urban software, reprogramming the city in terms of through the software that animates the cities, of working with the city as a finished product that now needs to be turned on. Option 2, work in an immanent form, a demediated sensation, free to do what it wants, as architecture becomes excused from programmatic considerations, by the extent to which it becomes animated by software, that architecture in essence can do what it's always wanted to be a pure mediated spatial sensation. Option 3, architects transform themselves into infrastructural designers and specialists. OMA's wind farm project, perhaps the most sort of quickly and opportunistically demonstrated the move in this direction. 4th, the one that I'm most interested in really is subtraction, strategies of subtraction. I think there will be at some point an architectural studio whose product is not the design, not the production of any building, but rather the removal of buildings that already exist. Subtractive practice. One that believes that there's enough stuff already, enough glass, enough steel. What was needed now is better negative space. Instead of positing the site as empty and architectural there to fill it, now posits the city is full, and the architect's job is to carve and sculpt a way to reveal what needs to be. The opposite then of an infill strategy. It begins with the assumption that information is not expensive, and your business is not to generate it, but that information is ubiquitous, and your business is to give it form. The Howard Rorkean impetus to build, to create, from the belly of the architect as a form-producing womb needs to be displaced by something more properly mathematical, by which additions and multiplication is joined equally by subtraction and division as operators. I'll close with one last thought. Architecture needs to stage its own suicide. A suicide not by blowing its head off, but more like taking pills and slowly, dreamingly absorbing itself into the organic fabric of the world. A deterritorialization of architecture, not an immolation. Architecture has to commit suicide in order to be reborn as something else, even as itself again. If it doesn't, it will become a more noxious cancer on the city and on itself. Partial solution is the dissolution of the general problematic of the interface onto multiple scales. Architecture needs to stage its own suicide. It has faked the fiery kind in the past too many times for anyone to take it seriously. That is, architecture does not need to burn, to correct Aaron Betsky, it needs rather to melt. I say this not because I don't love it, but because it's time for it to reappear as something else. I think this is the way to be true, to realize the fidelity to architecture, to the fidelity